Welcome back to Ellys Manor House. We hope that you enjoyed our first stint and that you're not there on your own. You've brought your friends and family to see us because you've been so captivated by what we've had to say and where we're wanting to go. So on our first program, we touched on the business of the fables. And I'd said to you, as we move along, we'll be explaining some of this to you. Now, these wall paintings, as you see, when you're actually doing a close-up of these, you can see the outline, but at the moment, they look slightly sort of as if the professionals, the people who do carry out the conservation, their description of it is like looking at it through a snowstorm. And that's because, you know, during Edward VI's time, these were whitewashed over. So these were only found in the late 40s, late 30s, early 40s. Because basically, we were moving from Catholicism into the Reformation and all of that. But nonetheless, these are before. Edward VI, no graven images, so they were whitewashed over. Just outside the door, which we'll show you at some point, there are still places where it's completely whitewashed over. They've not yet attempted to clean them off. Now, these could have been in a lot better shape, but they were what I call brutalized. And that's because, excuse me, when they were found, I'm not going to mention any names actually, but a professor was put in charge of these. And under his supervision, they'd uncovered a small section. And there's no blame, but basically they were waxed. And today that's considered a no-no, because they need to breathe. Now, I have been told we've got two wonderful conservators working on these, and they've assured me that it can be rectified. Now, before when these were first uncovered, now this is a name I would like to mention because I really do beat his drum. Because thanks to him, he's brought wall paintings to people who know about this sort of thing. He's brought a better understanding to our lives and this. And that's Dr. Rous, Dr. Clive Rous. Sadly, I never met him. We did try. When we came to this building, I was quite young, much younger. That was 33 years ago. He was a very elderly man, and we had a couple of conversations on the telephone where he'd say, he had this wonderful voice. He'd say, "Oh, Mr. Taylor, we must meet." And I'd say, "Dr. Rous, I would dearly love to meet with you, but I'm trying to stop water coming through the ceiling." And this was literal. There were buckets in this room catching water. Now, though I beat his drum, there is one thing, and I regret not having met with him, that I would have liked to have heard from his mouth, because in some of my research, it's there and it says that it was he that had said to English Heritage, "There's too much of this. It runs all the way around the upper floor." Incidentally, since then we've actually found beneath the floor downstairs more wall paintings. So it tells us that it wasn't just upstairs, it covered the whole of the building. But obviously the plasterwork downstairs has not survived, because when we came here, this building was said to be 90% damp. So we put in a complete damp-proof course. It took about 3.5 years for the building to dry out. And so the plaster above the floors has been raised downstairs. So the plaster above it hasn't survived. It's not the true plaster, but underneath or beneath the floor, that's true plaster, and that's where we found more. Now coming back to this, and in particular, Aesop's Fable, which is over on my shoulder here, and I've told you about it, gorging itself on meat and all of that. Now, you know, Renard being the first trickster of Europe, and I think I'd mention that, yes, it emanates from France. But in some other European countries, what you have is Isengrum, the wolf, as we see in places like Germany. It's the same story, but because of where it's emanating from, there are certain creatures which it's more pertinent to that place. And in Italy too, in Perugia, on the bottom rung of the basin, the fountain basin, they've got a wolf, and I'm not actually quite sure, memory serves me right, whether theirs is a crane. I think it's actually a stork, or it could be a heron. It's any bird with a surgical-like beak. And so, but the same story. Now, ironically, and this is no longer there, Versailles Palace used to have what was called the Labyrinth Garden. And in that garden, there were 39 water features, each depicting a fable. Now that's no longer there, but I have spoken with them and they've assured me that the drawings are still in the archives. So you see, the fables can be seen. There are some other country houses that I've visited in England, and one springs to mind, Fairfax House. It's a later building than this, up in Leeds. And over the fireplace, there's this plaster work. So it is the recognition of these things. We walk around these wonderful buildings, but it's when you see them, you need to be able to recognize them. And in doing so, you will then be able to draw from them what's actually being said. And so that's what we're about. We're wanting to share all of this with you, because if you're just walking around these buildings and you know, there are some buildings which they now call themselves treasure houses. And yes, that's exactly what they are. They were rich men's houses. They're all rich people, but they're degrees. Some of these, when I walk around them, I don't, as a matter of fact, too much now. I just think, gosh, there's a lot of stuff here. And you know that word stuff, one of my little nephews, he introduced me to it. He would say, gosh, uncle, they really have a lot of stuff here. And you know, it really makes you think when a little person says these sort of things, because you think, yes, we do gather a lot of stuff, and that's all it becomes, really, stuff. But for the fables, as I said, it's not something, it should never be thought of, it's something, yes, we did this at school. It is something that should stay with us, because I tell you, we learn so much. It's philosophy. And that's how they should be thought of. So you're introduced to the fables at school, and it takes you through life. And these are the things. We will be deciphering all of this. So stay with us. And look, this is going to be an exciting voyage. So we'll see you again very soon.